Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So today's video is based on a question that I receive a lot, and that is, how do you prevent writer's block? Because we all know the feeling, right, of getting into a project or a piece of work, and you're all ready. You've got your coffee, you've got your notepad, your pens, and then you basically have nothing to say when you're actually looking at that Google Doc or Word doc, right? And so I've been there throughout my career, writing for the past 15 years and owning a content agency and building a freelance content business and then mentoring writers. I have learned a few tricks that really help me. And so I will pass them on to you in the hopes that they will help you as well. So definitely let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced this. And if so, I hope they helped. And you can also check out a free copywriter starter kit in the comments if you're interested, and as well as the links below the show. All right, so let's get into it. The first thing that helps me the most is to write whatever I'm going to say as if I'm talking to a friend. Because I think what happens a lot is, especially if you're working on a very technical topic, you almost psych yourself out with how to even explain something, right? Like, how are you going to just talk about AI or some super complex tech platform or things like that? It starts to feel overwhelming. And I think that's where writer's block can come in. So the first thing I try and do if that happens is to take a step back and to just think, if I were saying this to my friend or to my mom or, to a family member, how would I say this? How would I just tell them? And that can help you get it out of your head. So write down however you would explain it to someone if you were just talking naturally. Another thing that you can do is even record it into a voice memo app on your phone or computer, and then go and write what you said. I think that can be a really good starting step to get out of your head wondering how to explain something or how to say it, and really just say it, right? The other thing that I think that helps with is removing some of that jargon and very complicated way of saying things. Because what I see happening anytime a writer is unfamiliar with a subject is they almost try and sound so much more professional and smart about this topic. But what happens is they lose their voice and they lose the personability and human aspect of what they're trying to say. So if you can just basically take it back a few notches, and as you read your writing, be like, is that really how I would say it? Or is there a more simple way that I can just write it down? That will help maintain your voice and just that communicative nature where you're not starting to sound like this marketing robot, right? So that's step number one, is just when you're looking at that blinking computer screen that's blank and intimidating you, just think, how would I say this to my friend? How would I explain it? And if you can't explain it yet to a friend, you might need a little bit more research. You might not understand it well enough yet to be able to even break it down and teach it through writing. So that's just a telltale sign too. Like, if you really are stumped in how you would just say it to another human sitting next to you, then you might want to do a little bit more research, and then that will come back to help you as well. All right, so that's step number one. Step number two is to save the introduction, conclusion, or title for last. The reason this helps is because the title of a blog post or an ebook or whatever it may be can have a lot of pressure, right? Because that's where you are capturing reader attention. That's where you are summarizing your entire article. That's where you're using your best words and condensing it into the smallest amount of space. And so they can be understandably intimidating, right? And so one thing that I almost always do is save those titles, intros, and conclusions for the end. I go back and I write them later. I get the meat of the article in, and then I like to fine tune the title, right? Or add the intro or add the conclusion. And I just find that that really helps me feel like the hard work is done, right? Because then you have written an entire blog post, and now you can just go add a few sentences to your intro or conclusion, right? Then you can just write your title because you know what you've said. I think mentally it also just helps with feeling like you aren't just starting this massive project and you can't even think of a line for a title. But if you come back to those parts with the post already written or the meat of the content already there, it just makes it that much easier to then be able to write a line or two for an intro or a title or a conclusion. So that's one I use almost all the time. And I really, really find that helps me get out of my head around the bigger parts of a post, such as the title, which does have a lot of weight to it. Another thing that you can do is, if you're interested, I host a course that teaches writers both how to write and how to build a business through freelance writing and scale to 6 figures. And I break down in one of the modules exactly how I write every single part of a post: the intro, the conclusion, the body paragraphs, the title, what I do to get past writer's block for each of them, that kind of thing. So I'll drop a link below in the description if you're interested. And writers have communicated to me that that's really helped to just see in real time how I think about it, and even to get formulas for this is how you introduce something, or this is how you wrap up a post consistently every time, so you don't even have to think about it. So that's always an option if you're interested. The final thing, so the first one is to write like you're talking to a friend. The second one is to save the title or intro and conclusion for last and just write the body first. The third one is to make sure that you are outlining your post into a few main points. This is another one that helps so much, because if you're looking at a Google Doc wondering what you're going to say about something, you may need your outline because an outline can break things down so clearly. Where instead of being like, what am I going to say about email marketing? What 3 tips am I going to give? You can go and decide 3 tips that you're going to share and give a paragraph for each of them, right? So all of a sudden, you're not writing this huge post on best practices for email marketing. You're writing this post with 3 tips, and you know exactly what those tips are, and you can surely write a few sentences about them, right? Why they matter, what the benefit is, an example, a statistic. You can fill in all those details very easily once you know where you're headed. I think this is so beneficial because you can take the most technical topics, such as artificial intelligence, and let's imagine you're writing a post on best practices for artificial intelligence. If you just think about that, that's going to sound overwhelming, right? You're like, where do I even begin with something like that? But if you've done your research and you've read some articles online and you've heard from experts, and you can break it down to 3 to 5 best practices or tips to use, go ahead and write those into your outline, what they are. And then your work as the writer is to simply go and fill in some supporting paragraphs for each of those tips. I hope that translates in explaining it, how it takes this thing that sounds so nebulous and so big. It's like, what do I even talk about when it comes to artificial intelligence? And instead, you know exactly the 3 to 5 things you're going to talk about, and you know how to write a paragraph, right? You know how to explain things. So you're like, okay, I'm going to say that you should always measure it. Okay, then you can teach people, why does measurement matter? How can you measure? What's an example? And just rinse and repeat for every single paragraph. For me, an outline really gets me out of my head, and it's almost this essential step to even writing to begin with. So if you don't have an outline, or if you just tend to go into things writing without one, try experimenting with that and really breaking things down into that outline, and that makes it so much easier to go and write from there. I even do this with these videos, where when I come up with a concept, I quickly write my 3 points or 5 points, whatever I'm sharing. And from then I know I can go and share about this for a few minutes each, right? Like I can share a few paragraphs, whether through writing or through speaking, for each of these. So it just gets you into such a cadence and gives you such a process as a writer, where you'll never have to worry about writer's block again, because writer's block is almost a sign that you need to do a little more research, that you need to do a little more outlining, right? Or that you just need to take off your like writer mask and instead write as you speak, write as if you're talking to a friend, write as if you're explaining it to someone who knows nothing about it. They often say that you should write at like the 6th grade to 8th grade level, right? Because that's where the average reader is going to really follow you well. So sometimes it can be helpful in that regard to think, if I was going to explain this to a young kid or young adult, how would I explain it to them? And that's about the level that you want to be writing at. All right. So I hope that those 3 tips help you. Tell me in the comments below if you have any other tips that help you with writer's block, or which one you're going to try first. And I really hope you never experience that feeling again of looking at a blinking computer screen and wondering what to write. I hope this helps. Talk soon.